Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Wednesday, September 10, 2025. Conservative activist Charlie Kirk is shot at an event at Utah Valley University. President Donald Trump posting later that Charlie Kirk has died. The Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer forces a vote in the Senate on an amendment to release all the files related to the case of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says Russia flying drones over Poland is reckless and dangerous, whether it was intentional or not. Poland shot down the drones with the aid of NATO allies. Nobody was injured. U.S. House of Representatives votes on whether to continue U.S. aid to Ukraine for its war in Russia. The Senate Banking Committee approves the nomination of Stephen Miran for Federal Reserve Board Governor in a party line vote. Democrat James Walkinshaw is sworn in as a member of Congress after winning the special election Tuesday in Northern Virginia's 11th Congressional District. And Attorney General Pam Bondi announces a major seizure of illegal vaping products around the country, smuggled in from China. Deseret News reported this afternoon that Charlie Kirk was shot at an event at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. Deseret News reporters on the scene report seeing Kirk shot during a Q&A with students. About 2 minutes into the interview, a gunshot rang out and Kirk appeared to be hit in the neck. The campus has been evacuated. An older man was arrested and taken into police custody. His name was not immediately released. That was from the Deseret News. And then later, as there were reports that Charlie Kirk was sent to the hospital, President Donald Trump then posting on Truth Social, the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you. That post from President Donald Trump. As Charlie Kirk was in the hospital, a number of members of Congress spoke out. Here is Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, on the Senate floor.
Mr. President, I'd first note that we are all horrified watching images and following the news out of Utah, and we are sending all of our thoughts to Mr. Kirk, to his family, to survivors there.
That's Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, on the Senate floor after Charlie Kirk was shot and at the time in the hospital. Also about that time, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, made a statement to reporters.
We just want to make a brief statement here, and I'm going to go and ask my colleagues to join me in a moment of silence for our dear friend Charlie Kirk. We ask everyone to pray for him and his family. I'm just going to state the obvious here. This is detestable, what's happened. Political violence has become all too common in American society, and this is not who we are. It violates the core principles of our country, our Judeo-Christian heritage, our civil society, our American way of life, and it must stop. We need every political figure, we need everyone who has a platform to say this loudly and clearly. We can settle disagreements and disputes in a civil manner, and political violence must be called out, and it has to stop. Again, we ask for prayer. I'm going to go lead the chamber here in a moment of silence, and we hope for the best for Charlie. Thank you.
That's House Speaker Mike Johnson speaking to reporters when Charlie Kirk had been shot and was in the hospital, and later President Donald Trump posting that Charlie Kirk has passed away. Charlie Kirk was on C-SPAN a number of times over the years. He was the co-founder of the conservative youth organization Turning Point USA. And in July, they held a conference in Tampa.
Who's excited to be here in Tampa, Florida for the Student Action Summit? This is the largest Student Action Summit in history, by far, nearly double the size of the one that we had a couple years ago. And for those of you that are visiting that are not students, we give the best seats to students for a reason. Because these students, every day, are on the front lines being smeared, being slandered, being canceled, being kicked out of classes, kicked out of fraternities, kicked out of sororities. These are the students that worked so hard to register voters this last election. These are the students that start these chapters. They are the vanguard for saving this country. 13 years ago, when I first started Turning Point USA and this journey began, if you would have told me 13 years later that we would have someone running for the presidency as a Republican winning the youth vote in major states, I would say, how would that be possible? 13 years ago, we started the journey, and it was chapter by chapter, student by student, person by person, prove me wrong by prove me wrong, liberal by liberal, proving one wrong at a time, and billions of views later, what happened in November was a shot heard around the world. You see, all Kamala Harris needed to do was get younger people to vote at the same margins that Joe Biden got them to vote back in 2020. Did you know that baby boomers moved 3 points more Democrat back in November? Haha. But younger voters moved 22 points to the right in November.
Charlie Kirk, the CEO and co-founder of the conservative youth organization Turning Point USA, at their conference in Tampa, Florida in July, as covered by C-SPAN from C-SPAN's video library. President Donald Trump posting that Charlie Kirk has been killed after being shot at an event at a university in Utah. Congresswoman Luz Rivas, a Democrat from California, posting Charlie Kirk was killed because of political violence. Let me be clear, as Americans, we must stand united in condemning acts of political violence in all its forms. My condolences go out to his family. Congressman David Schweikert, Republican from Arizona, writing on X, my prayers and condolences are with the Kirk family after the senseless and tragic loss of Charlie Kirk today. May he rest in peace and love. This is Washington Today. Story from The Hill. Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer of New York ambushed Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican of South Dakota, and the rest of the Senate Republican leadership Wednesday morning by filing an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act to direct Attorney General Pam Bondi to make public all unclassified records, documents, and communications related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Schumer offered his amendment to Senate Armed Services Committee Chair Roger Wicker's substitute amendment to the annual defense authorization bill, which Thune hopes to pass before Congress leaves town for the Rosh Hashanah recess later this month. Schumer's amendment is the same bill Congressman Thomas Massie, Republican of Kentucky, and Congressman Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, are pushing in the House to force the Justice Department to release all the Epstein files in its possession. That was from The Hill. Senator Schumer spoke to reporters.
So I just filed an amendment to the NDAA bill that would require the Attorney General to release all of the Epstein files. It's the same exact language as the House discharge petition, and something that Senator Merkley has proposed as well. There's been so much lying, obfuscation, cover-ups. The American people need to see everything that's in the Epstein file, and my amendment would make that happen.
How were you able to file the amendment? Was the tree not filled, or?
That is correct.
Okay, so
You're a very astute.
I'm a rules nerd.
Yes.
Leader Schumer, what would you say? What would you say to Republicans who might say that filing cloture is a hostile act? And are you worried at all that this could potentially jeopardize or derail?
You're talking about Epstein?
Yes.
Okay. Look, the bottom line is the American people need to see this. Donald Trump has lied about this. There was no picture. There was no drawing. There's been so many lies, so much prevarication, so much cover-up. The American people, Democrats, independents, Republicans, are demanding it be made public, and it should be. We hope Republicans will vote for it. They should.
The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, speaking to reporters. Semaphore Congressional Bureau Chief Burgess Everett writing on X that Senate Majority Leader John Thune not happy about Schumer forcing vote on Epstein amendment. And a quote, it's a stunt and we'll dispose of it. And Alex Bolton with The Hill posting, Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, a key defense hawk, says without hesitation that Republicans will vote to table Schumer amendment to defense bill to direct DOJ to release all Epstein-related documents. Also about Jeffrey Epstein from Great Britain, The Guardian writes, the United Kingdom's ambassador to the U.S., Peter Mandelson, has said more very embarrassing details of his friendship with the pedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein will come out, as he said he had never seen any wrongdoing. His admission comes after U.S. lawmakers released Epstein's 50th birthday book, in which Mandelson called him my best pal in a handwritten note. In his first public comments since the revelation, Lord Mandelson said he never sought nor did Epstein offer any introductions to women in the same way as he had done for others. Perhaps it's because I am a gay man, quote from Mandelson, that reporting from The Guardian. Mandelson spoke in a podcast today. And today in the British House of Commons in London, during Prime Minister's questions, this came up in an exchange between Prime Minister Keir Starmer and opposition leader Kemi Badenoch.
Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in Peter Mandelson?
Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying the victims of Epstein are the forefront of our minds. He was a despicable criminal who committed the most heinous crimes and destroyed the lives of so many women and girls. The Ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
This is interesting, Mr. Speaker. He says the Ambassador has expressed full regret, but the victims of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein have called for Lord Mandelson to be sacked. And just so the House is aware, in 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of child prostitution and sex trafficking that took place between 2002 and 2005. That is the precise period which Lord Mandelson called Jeffrey Epstein his best pal. Absolutely. Was the Prime Minister aware of this intimate relationship when he appointed Lord Mandelson to be our ambassador in Washington?
Mr. Speaker, as she and the House would expect, full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors. The Ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the Prime Minister if he knew. The fact that he didn't answer indicates that he probably did know. I wasn't asking a question about process, I was asking a question about his judgment. The Daily Telegraph reports today that while Lord Mandelson was Business Secretary, he brokered a deal with Jeffrey Epstein while he was Business Secretary, and that this occurred after Epstein had been convicted of child sex offences. Given this new information, does the Prime Minister really think it is tenable for our ambassador to remain in post?
Mr. Speaker, the relationship between the US and the UK is one of our foremost relationships, and I have confidence in the ambassador in the role that he is doing.
Mr. Speaker, I think it is embarrassing that the Prime Minister is still saying that he has confidence in a man who was brokering deals with convicted child sex offenders while sitting in government. That is a disgrace.
Kemi Badenoch is the opposition leader in Great Britain, the leader of the Conservative Party, questioning the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, head of the Labour Party, during Prime Minister's Question Time in the British House of Commons. This is Washington Today. From Reuters, Poland shot down suspected Russian drones in its airspace on Wednesday with the backing of aircraft from its NATO allies, the first time a member of the Western military alliance is known to have fired shots during Russia's war in Ukraine. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk told Parliament it was the closest we have been to open conflict since World War II, though he also said he had no reason to believe we're on the brink of war. That was from Reuters. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte made a statement at NATO headquarters in Brussels, Belgium.
Last night, numerous drones from Russia violated Polish airspace. Our air defenses were activated and successfully ensured the defense of NATO territory, as they are designed to do. Several allies were involved alongside Poland. This included Polish F-16s, Dutch F-35s, Italian AWACS, NATO multi-role tanker transport and German Patriots. I commend the pilots and all who contributed to this quick and skillful response. The North Atlantic Council met this morning and discussed the situation in light of Poland's request for consultations under Article 4 of the Washington Treaty. Allies expressed solidarity with Poland and denounced Russia's reckless behavior. A full assessment of the incident is ongoing. What is clear is that the violation last night is not an isolated incident. The Supreme Allied Commander will continue to actively manage our deterrence and defense posture along the entire eastern flank. Allies are resolved to defend every inch of Allied territory. We will closely monitor the situation along our eastern flank, our air defenses continually at the ready. This only reinforces the importance of NATO and the path to which allies agreed at our summit in The Hague earlier this year. We need to invest more in our defense, ramp up defense production, so we have what we need to deter and defend. And we need to continue to support Ukraine, whose security is interlinked with our own. And let me conclude by saying that Russia is waging a dangerous war of aggression against Ukraine that continually targets civilians and civilian infrastructure. Allies are determined to step up their support for Ukraine in the face of Russia's escalating campaign.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in Brussels at NATO headquarters. President Donald Trump posting on Truth Social, "What with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go," with an exclamation point. RT.com reports Moscow has dismissed Poland's latest claim that Russian drones breached the country's airspace. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said no evidence has been provided linking the UAVs to Russia. In Washington, D.C. today, the U.S. House of Representatives debating the annual Defense Policy and Programs Bill called the NDAA for National Defense Authorization Act. $892 billion. Nearly 300 amendments were made in order by the House Rules Committee, and one of them would stop U.S. aid to Ukraine. It was offered by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia.
The administration wants to end the conflict in Ukraine. Ukraine is not a NATO member nation. We're not contractually bound to provide their protection. And need I remind everyone here that we're $37 trillion in debt. $37 trillion. We should not have to be sending more American tax dollars over to defend Ukraine and the people of Ukraine when Ukrainians themselves are coming to our country and getting murdered on trains, subway trains. Irina Zarutska was brutally murdered by an American man as she was riding on a subway train. Yet we're sending $700 million more to Ukraine. The American people would like that $700 million spent here to keep people safe and stop senseless, insane murders.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia, on the House floor, offering her amendment to the Defense Policy and Programs Bill. Congressman Adam Smith, Democrat from Washington State, the ranking member on the Armed Services Committee, opposed the amendment.
This amendment would be very destructive to achieving peace in Ukraine. I agree with the gentlelady. That should be the goal. But what has been clear for quite some time is that Putin will only stop his war when it is clear that he cannot achieve his objectives in Ukraine. President Trump showing weakness on that issue, literally rolling out the red carpet for Putin, has only made the war worse. Ever since President Trump has tried to blame the war on Zelensky and Ukraine, Putin has ramped up the war, launching more aggressive attacks than he ever has in the 3.5 years of the war, and most recently, sending drones over Poland as well. Weakness invites aggression. And I know the proponent of this amendment says that many, many times, but apparently doesn't recognize weakness when she sees it. That is what cutting off Ukraine does. You want to stop the war, back the 53-nation coalition that is supporting Ukraine and making it clear to Putin he's not going to win. That forces him to the peace table. Showing weakness, backing off, undermining the coalition only extends the war. Please defeat this amendment. I reserve the balance of my time.
Congressman Adam Smith, Democrat from Washington State, on the House floor, and the amendment offered by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia, was defeated. Another amendment to the Defense Authorization Bill passed, offered by Congressman Greg Meeks, Democrat of New York, ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and Chip Roy, Republican from Texas, to repeal the authorization for the use of military force, AUMF, from 1991 and also the one from 2002. Here is Congressman Meeks and some opposition from Congressman Brian Mast, Republican of Florida, chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in strong support of my amendment to the NDAA, which would finally repeal both the 2002 and the 1991 authorizations for use of military force, or AUMFs. These AUMFs are long obsolete. By remaining on the books, these AUMFs only risk abuse by administrations of either party to sanction military force that Congress has not considered or approved. It is time for Congress to reclaim its constitutional authority over matters of war and peace, its Article I war powers. by removing these open-ended AUMFs once and for all. And I'm thankful to my colleagues who have worked to pass these repeals, having nearly passed both chambers in the 117th and the 118th Congress. And I'm particularly thankful to Representative Roy and Massey, along with many co-sponsors who have joined this bipartisan effort. This amendment is going to pass because a clear majority of this House agree it's time to close these chapters of endless wars. And I'm prepared to fight in conference to get this over the finish line. It's time to, for once and for all, end these forever wars. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New York reserves. This is the gentleman from Florida seek recognition.
Good. I rise in opposition.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in opposition to this. I'm going to say for procedural reasons, but there are procedures that are important here, and the ranking member should know this. As a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, we have sole jurisdiction over powers of war. What goes on abroad with war is not flippant activity. It affects the lives of soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen that are stationed abroad in Europe, in Asia, Latin America, the Middle East. And while I agree with a lot of the comments that the ranking member just made about reasons to say there should be sunsets on AUMF, and I didn't hear everything that my colleague, Mr. Roy, said on it, but I'm sure undoubtedly we have agreement on why there should be sunsets on these things. It cannot be done without bringing in the CENTCOM commander and this commander and this commander and this commander and saying, what are your thoughts on this? What effects does this have on our ability to react or deploy? What effects does this have on those downrange in counterterrorism operations as we speak? What needs to be put back in place in order for us to not be afoul of something that we're doing right now? And these are questions that were not asked, and the answers were not given. And this goes beyond just our generals in the Pentagon. It goes to our secretaries, it goes to others. And absolutely answer questions that I'm committed to asking and answers that I'm committed to finding the answer to, and in a timely way. I consider it to be vitally important. Again, we have, I think, probably large agreement on reasons to sunset things, but it should not be done in absence of doing something of this gravity in the proper way. And in that, I thank you for giving me time to rise in opposition as much as we find matters of agreement and opposition. So thank you.
Congressman Brian Mast, Republican of Florida, chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, on the House floor, responding to an amendment offered by the ranking Democrat on the committee, Gregory Meeks of New York. And the amendment did pass, repealing the two AUMFs from 1991 and 2002. The vote in the House, 261 to 167, 49 Republicans joining all Democrats in voting yes. Just one of many amendments to the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, being considered by the House. Follow it all on C-SPAN. The Senate is always live on C-SPAN 2, and both on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app. You're listening to C-SPAN Radio's Washington Today. Story from Roll Call. The Senate Banking Committee voted along party lines Wednesday 13-11 to advance the nomination of Stephen Miran for a seat on the Federal Reserve, as Democrats warn that his potential conflicts of interest will trail him to a floor vote. Miran was nominated by President Donald Trump to fill out the last 4 months of former Fed Governor Adriana Kugler's term. Miran is currently chair of the Council of Economic Advisors and said during a hearing last week that he would not resign from his CEA post, but rather take an unpaid leave of absence if he were confirmed for the Fed role. That was from Roll Call. Senator Tim Scott, Republican of South Carolina, chairs the Banking Committee.
Dr. Miran brings deep experience, proven leadership, and a clear commitment to ensuring that the American economy remains strong and competitive. He has also guided policies that strengthen domestic production, reduce trade imbalances, and bolster economic resilience. The work of Dr. Miran directly affects the lives of everyday Americans and the prosperity of states like my home state of South Carolina, where hundreds of thousands of small businesses rely on policies that foster growth, investment, and opportunity. Dr. Miran is ready to step into this role that is critical to advancing opportunity, promoting accountability, and protecting American prosperity. I look forward to confirming Dr. Miran and the contribution he will make in his service to our nation.
Senator Tim Scott, Republican from South Carolina, chair of the Banking Committee. The committee's ranking Democrat, Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, spoke against the nomination.
Rather than change his tariff policies, reverse his disastrous energy policies, and restore the health care coverage that he has just ripped away from 15 million Americans, Trump wants to make the Fed his economic scapegoat. Dr. Miran's nomination is just the next phase of President Trump's very public, months-long campaign to stack the Fed with loyalists. When Trump seizes control, Fed decisions won't be driven by data, but by Donald Trump's personal feelings. And when the Fed loses credibility, businesses and consumers stop trusting it to control inflation and prices go up. It happened when President Nixon bullied the Fed and forced prices up for a decade. And it's happened overseas when dictators have seized control of their central banks. Dr. Miran has already spectacularly failed every independence test that we could think of. He could not say the words, "Donald Trump lost the 2020 election." Dr. Miran will be the first admitted election denier to sit on the federal board. He is refusing to resign his current White House job. That is ridiculous. One day of serving as the president's chief economist and supposedly independent governor at the Fed would be one day too many. And let's be 100% clear. We are not voting on a 4-month term at the Fed. Dr. Miran has also indicated he could sit in that seat indefinitely after his term expires in January of next year. Dr. Miran's so-called leave of absence is a bad joke. He will be sitting down the street from the White House, and he has refused to disclose any of the communications he has with the president or the White House while he's at the Fed. This nomination sets up an obvious Trump loyalty test for Dr. Miran. He knows that every vote he takes determines whether he can go back to his White House job. That is not independence. That is servitude.
Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts, the Banking Committee ranking member before the vote along party lines 13-11 to send the nomination of Stephen Miran for Federal Reserve Board member to the full Senate. Story from Axios. The Trump administration filed notice Wednesday it will appeal a judge's order letting Fed Governor Lisa Cook remain in her position. A federal judge ruled late Tuesday that Trump cannot remove Cook while her lawsuit challenging his attempt to fire her is still pending. Trump fired Cook on August 25th, saying he had cause to do so because of allegations by Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte that she had committed mortgage fraud, reporting from Axios. From the Hill, the Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer sent an explicit warning to Republican leaders Wednesday that the proposals they are considering to fund the government and avoid a shutdown on October 1st do not have enough Democratic votes to pass the Senate. Schumer's remarks came in response to a proposal from the White House to pass a funding stopgap that would last until January 31st, which, if enacted, would likely foreclose the possibility of getting a longer-term spending deal before the Christmas and New Year's recess. They also came in response to Thune's comments to reporters Tuesday evening that appeared to close the door on adding an extension of enhanced health insurance subsidies provided by the Affordable Care Act to the stopgap funding measure that needs to pass by the end of the month. That was from the Hill. Here is Senator Schumer with reporters.
What the Republicans have proposed is not good enough to meet the needs of the American people and not good enough to get our votes. Democrats have always said we need to meet the needs of the American people, particularly when it comes to costs and health care costs. Leader Thune needs to sit down with us and negotiate a bipartisan bill that meets these needs in order to get something to pass.
Senator Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, speaking with reporters at another news conference. The House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, also Democrat from New York, explained his position.
Democrats are prepared to support a bipartisan spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, public safety, and economic well-being. But we will not support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to rip away health care from the American people. Questions?
Do you consider a clean CR to be inadequate in that way?
In March, House Democrats strongly opposed the partisan Republican spending bill that hurt everyday Americans in a variety of ways, including making their health care more expensive. A continuing resolution that continues the failed policies of the Republican Party that we voted against is not the type of policy that actually meets the needs of the American people.
U.S. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, at a news conference today. The House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, said at a news conference on Tuesday that if the federal government shuts down with the start of the new fiscal year, October 1st, it will be the Democrats' fault.
House Republicans continue to work through regular order to fund the government for FY26, for the next fiscal year. We're working closely with the White House and the Senate to ensure we meet our deadlines, and Chairman Cole, Tom Cole of the Appropriators, continues to diligently work towards getting all 12 bills out of committee. And they're almost done with that. And as we get closer to the funding deadline, though, we recognize the shutdown chatter from the left is growing louder. Some of these people seem to enjoy this. It seems Democrats may take the path of maximum resistance and try to shut the government down. It's not surprising because they're struggling, because they don't really have a message or a leader, or their party registration is falling, their approval ratings are in the low 20s, and they're about to elect a Marxist to be the mayor of New York City. They are desperately searching for a solution, and some in the party apparently think a government shutdown would be some sort of political advantage to them. It'd be what we all know is dangerous and harmful to millions of Americans, and that is not the answer. So I'm going to say this again, and I'm saying it in good faith. I've shared this with the Democrat leader in the House and other colleagues. If Democrats are willing to work with us, we have our sleeves rolled up, and we want to do this in good faith. We just have to think responsibly how to spend less money than we did last year. And if they're willing to do that, and it's incumbent upon all of us to do it with the high national debt, we're open to that. But the ultimate question of whether there's going to be a government shutdown at the end of the month is going to be up to congressional Democrats, and that's just the way it is.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, at a news conference on Tuesday. Wall Street today, the Dow down 220, NASDAQ up 6, S&P up 19. Story from Axios: after taking a stake in Intel and a cut of NVIDIA's chip sales in China, the U.S. government may next target a share of the money generated by patents developed at major universities using federal funding. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick tells Mike Allen in the premiere episode of the Axios show. And Axios posted a clip.
If that's the model, who's next? What other types of deals like this can you see?
I think the universities who are getting all this money, the scientists get the patents, the universities get the patents, and the funder of $50 billion, the U.S. government, you know what we get? Zero. It's time that we should, don't you think we should get, if we, in business, if I gave them half the money, if I gave them 100% of their money, I would get half the profits with the scientists. So I think if we fund it and they invent a patent, the United States of America taxpayer should get half the benefit.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in a preview clip of an interview with Axios co-founder Mike Allen. They're calling it the Axios Show, and the screen at the end of the video had "Coming Soon." Washington Today continues in a moment.
Coming up live Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on C-SPAN Radio. President Donald Trump visits the Pentagon to mark the 24th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Again, listen live at 9 a.m. Eastern Time here on C-SPAN Radio, and find all of C-SPAN Radio's schedule information on our website at cspan.org.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. Fox News reporting that Charlie Kirk, the conservative activist and founder of Turning Point USA, is dead after being shot during a campus event at Utah Valley University Wednesday. President Donald Trump confirmed Kirk's death in a post on Truth Social, writing, "The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you." Reporting from Fox News, Charlie Kirk was the head of Turning Point USA, that was a youth activist group. Washington Post reporting that Fairfax County Supervisor James Walkinshaw, a Democrat, defeated Republican Stuart Whitson in Tuesday's special election in Virginia's 11th Congressional District. Election was held to succeed Congressman Gerald Connolly, Democrat of Virginia, who died of esophageal cancer in May. Walkinshaw is Connolly's former chief of staff. Whitson is a legal director at a conservative think tank. Unofficial results showed that as of Wednesday morning, Walkinshaw had 74.8% of the vote to Whitson's 25%, with write-in candidates receiving some votes. Reporting from the Washington Post, James Walkinshaw spoke on the House floor after taking the oath and becoming a member of Congress today.
I'm also honored to follow in the footsteps of my dear friend and mentor, Congressman Jerry Connolly, a singular figure in Virginia and in this body who showed us what principled leadership looks like. His legacy will guide me every day. With that gratitude, Mr. Speaker, comes responsibility to speak honestly about the challenges my community faces. In Virginia, we are on the leading edge of President Trump's economy. In my district, everyone knows someone who has lost their job due to the agenda coming from the White House and too often from this chamber. If we do not change course, what is true in Northern Virginia today will soon be true in every district in this nation. Families everywhere will know someone who has lost their job because of the DOGE cuts, the tariffs, the budget bill, or our failure to address the rising costs on everything from groceries to rent to prescription drugs. But this week, Mr. Speaker, the people of Virginia sent a clear message. They want pragmatic solutions. They want a government that works for everyone. They want us to tackle the high cost of living, housing, and health care, to confront climate change, to honor the public servants, our federal employees who keep our government running. Mr. Speaker, I am humbled by the trust my constituents have placed in me. I will carry their hopes and their voices into this chamber every day. I will never forget where I came from, and I'll never stop working for a government that reflects the best of who we are. Together, Mr. Speaker, I believe we can build that future. Thank you, and I yield back.
Congressman James Walkinshaw, Democrat from Virginia, on the House floor after taking the oath. He won a special election Tuesday night, replacing Jerry Connolly, who passed away while in office. And now there are 432 voting U.S. House members, 219 Republicans, 213 Democrats, 3 vacancies. The next special election is September 23rd in Arizona for the seat held by the late Democratic Congressman Raul Grijalva. WJLA-TV in Washington writes, the fierce battle over how Washington, D.C. is governed continues to escalate on Capitol Hill. As President Donald Trump's 30-day federal crime emergency in the district ends Wednesday, the House Oversight Committee convenes to mark up 14 Republican-backed bills. These proposals collectively pose a sweeping rollback of local control and judicial reforms in the nation's capital. The WJLA article has a summary of some of these bills, including mandating pretrial detention and cash bail for public safety offenses, instituting tougher sentencing guidelines, lowering the age that juveniles can be tried as adults, eliminating the Judicial Nominating Commission and letting the president choose D.C. judges, replacing the elected D.C. Attorney General with a presidential appointee, and changes to rules on public camping to eliminate homeless encampments. Congressman James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, chair of the Oversight and Reform Committee, opened up today's markup.
Crime in the District of Columbia has recently reached levels unseen since the violent era of the early 1990s. Juvenile crime has reportedly more than doubled the national average as of February 2024. The D.C. Attorney General and D.C. Council's soft-on-crime policies have created an environment of school absences and offenders to be released, allowing juvenile crime and violent crime to flourish. Further, recent anti-law enforcement rhetoric and highly restrictive policing laws from the D.C. Council have created retention and recruitment challenges for the Metropolitan Police Department. President Trump, in response, has made sweeping moves to bring federal law enforcement resources into the district and exercise existing authorities under the Home Rule Act to direct local law enforcement to combat the crime crisis. Like President Trump, House Republicans are committed to restoring law and order in our nation's capital city. The Home Rule Act, which was signed into law in 1973, provides a charter for the local government of the District of Columbia, granting a degree of self-governance to D.C. officials, including the authority to legislate, conduct elections, and otherwise govern local municipal affairs. Under the Home Rule Act, Congress retains the right to enact legislation for D.C. on any subject, including legislation to amend or repeal any law in force in the district prior to or after an enactment, and any act passed by the D.C. Council. Today, this committee will exercise this authority to consider several pieces of legislation to reinforce President Trump's efforts to make D.C. safe again. Every resident and visitor deserves to feel safe in our nation's capital, and today, this committee will fulfill its constitutional duty to oversee district affairs and make D.C. safe again. I hope my colleagues will join me in supporting today's agenda of legislation needed to address D.C.'s crime crisis.
Congressman James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, chair of the Oversight and Reform Committee, opening up today's markup on those 14 bills. The ranking Democrat on the committee is Robert Garcia of California.
It's pretty clear that Donald Trump and House Republicans, especially here on the Oversight Committee, are pushing a blatant power grab by hijacking authority from local Washington, D.C. leaders and residents. Now, as a former mayor myself, I know that city governments must serve the residents, and governments are there on behalf of the people. It's also a way to ensure when you elect someone to government that they're being held accountable by the people that elect them. Now, Congress should not use our nation's capital, an American city with over 700,000 residents, as a political prop. The people of Washington, D.C. should be empowered to make their own decisions. And quite frankly, if the president is so obsessed with governing D.C., he should step down as president and run for mayor.
Congressman Robert Garcia, Democrat from California, ranking member on the Oversight and Reform Committee, at the start of today's day-long markup on those 14 bills. Washington, D.C.'s congressional delegate, Democrat Eleanor Holmes Norton, member of the committee, putting out a press release that reads that Republicans in Congress may have the ability to impose their will on D.C., but I will not make it easy for them. I'll speak in Wednesday's markup about every single D.C. bill the committee marks up. These bills are yet further evidence of why we need D.C. statehood. From Associated Press, federal agents carried out seizures nationwide of illegal vaping products Wednesday as the Trump administration moved to crack down on products that are regularly used by teens in the U.S. after being smuggled in from China. Attorney General Pam Bondi and Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. traveled to Illinois to tout the seizures, which included more than 600,000 illegal products taken from a distributor outside of Chicago. That was from Associated Press. They were in Wooddale, Illinois, not far from Chicago, in front of a warehouse where those products were taken.
Department of Justice has partnered with HHS, FDA, U.S. Marshals, and ATF, my two agencies. Late July, Secretary Kennedy and Dr. Makari came to meet with me at the Department of Justice. They expressed concerns about the Chinese vapes here in our country. So many think or thought that these were legal. They are not, and we're going to tell you why. Earlier today, pursuant to search warrants issued by federal courts, U.S. Marshals began seizing hundreds of thousands of units of illicit vaping products at locations across the United States, including here at Midwest Goods in this suburb of Chicago. Many of these products were smuggled in from China, circumventing regulations. They often contain undisclosed or untested chemicals which fail to meet FDA safety standards. We're also finding they evade proper labeling and marketing regulations. It's clear many of these products are being illegally brought into America. They're targeting children, young adults, college students, and even members of our military. They're labeled as cotton candy, bubble gum, and Fruit Loops, among others. These dangerous vapes are being sold near our bases, our military bases, our schools, and they are exposing our children and service members to serious health risk from untested chemicals. In Florida, we have reports of kids in high school, in schools, in middle schools being taken to the hospital because of lung conditions due to this vaping. Why we're standing here today, we're so close to less than a mile and a half away from a high school, a middle school, and an elementary school. And also a military facility is very close by. The retailers are in the same locations, often near military bases.
Attorney General Pam Bondi at a news conference near Chicago. Also there, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. More from the Associated Press article. Agents with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the Food and Drug Administration, and the U.S. Marshals Service also seized illegal products from distributors and retailers in North Carolina, Arizona, New Jersey, Georgia, and Florida, federal officials said. This is Washington Today. Michael Kratsios, director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, testified before Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Subcommittee today about President Donald Trump's artificial intelligence strategy. The full committee chair, Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, asked him about a bill the senator introduced to, as a Reuters article explains, let artificial intelligence companies apply for exemptions from federal regulation to help them experiment in developing new technology, something referred to as the sandbox.
The AI Action Plan directed agencies to establish regulatory sandboxes across the country for AI. Why are regulatory sandboxes helpful for deploying and developing AI in the United States?
There are so many technologies that are developed that the regulatory environment as it exists is not designed to is not designed to accommodate. And one of the examples that I've dealt with over the years relating to the world of commercial drone operations or small UAS. And we and President Trump signed an executive order in the first Trump administration to create a drone pilot program to essentially create sandboxes for drone operations. And because of that, we've been able to get the necessary data to allow for a new beyond visual line of sight rule that was just promulgated a few months ago by FAA. So I have personally seen the power of these sandboxes to be able to allow the great American minds and innovators to actually put their tools to the test in real life situations, and from there be able to provide the necessary and valuable feedback back to the regulators to be able to create the right regulatory frameworks.
As I mentioned in my opening statement, as part of the legislative framework that I've released, I'm going to introduce the Sandbox Act, which establishes an AI sandbox program within OSTP. Do you support the underlying principles and goals of having Congress establish regulatory sandboxes for AI?
Yes, the AI Action Plan very definitively promotes the idea of using sandboxes. Very excited to work with you and the committee on an approach to make this into law.
Terrific.
Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, and Michael Kratsios, director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, at today's Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Subcommittee hearing. Senator Ed Markey, Democrat of Massachusetts, asked the witness about AI data centers and electricity use. Senator Markey saying the cost of electricity is going up. You can find the video of the full hearing at our website, cspan.org. And this from Reuters: construction spending on U.S. data centers reached an all-time high of $40 billion at a seasonally adjusted annual rate in June, as technology giants continue pouring billions into AI infrastructure, according to a Bank of America Institute report. And finally, on Washington Today, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett is on a book tour promoting her new book, Listening to the Law, Reflections on the Court and the Constitution. Tuesday night, she was at the Ronald Reagan Foundation's Center on Civility and Democracy in Simi Valley, California. And one of the topics, whether the Supreme Court will ever allow cameras to broadcast oral arguments of cases.
Another thing we talked about when you were here last was the question of whether cameras should be in the Supreme Court. And you said that if cameras were added, it could change the nature of the proceedings. Has your view changed at all on that?
It's gotten firmer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the court, we often imagine that if cameras were visible someplace or present someplace, that they would be like a fly on the wall recording it. I don't know. The court moves slowly, change comes slowly, so cameras would be a really big change. Right now we're streaming audio, and that might not sound like a big deal, but that didn't start happening until COVID. So we do live stream the audio, we just don't have the cameras and the video. But again, I'm one person of 9, it's not my call. It's an institutional decision by the court, but I think the audio is good for now.
Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett Tuesday night in Simi Valley, California, at an event hosted by the Ronald Reagan Foundation, part of the Justice's book tour. We'll note that the audio stream of the oral arguments currently available, often played here on C-SPAN Radio and sometimes on C-SPAN television, and C-SPAN is committed, should there ever be allowed to have cameras in the Supreme Court, we'll cover all the cases for you. And before we close, there's another bit of news to share with you. Beginning this fall, all 3 C-SPAN networks will be available on YouTube TV and Hulu Plus Live TV. C-SPAN's availability on these streaming platforms expands access to our network's trusted, unfiltered coverage of U.S. government. We'll keep you updated on the launch date soon for all 3 C-SPAN networks available on YouTube TV and Hulu Plus Live TV. Thanks for listening and watching wherever you follow C-SPAN. Have a good night.